Prior to WitnessAI, I was working at a large company. GPT hit the scene November 2022. I told everyone to go run away and go use these AI tools. Everyone went away and did. General counsel went, oh, no, 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 no. The amount of stuff you guys have leaked is crazy. These two guys in the office of the CTO are the only ones who are allowed to use these tools now. And you'd be surprised how many people I spoke with at other companies who had the exact same, you know, run to the right, run to the left process. And it became clear as these tools became more powerful that that was just not going to work. And you had to move from the old command and control, fear-based AI is the guy in the hoodie to a thing where like we have to enable this stuff. It has to be like, how do we use this stuff for good as opposed to how do we block it for bad?
Hello and welcome to the Cyber Pro podcast, where industry leaders share their insights because hackers never sleep. Let's get right into it. Fellow Rick is on the call with me. I love it. So here's the easiest question you're going to have all day. Who are you and why are you awesome?
Well, thanks, Rick. Good to be here with fellow Rick. I'm Rick Caccia. I'm the CEO and co-founder of WitnessAI. WitnessAI is an amazing AI security and compliance company growing super fast. I'm happy to talk about what we're doing today and more importantly about some of the challenges that our customers are facing and overcoming.
I love it, Rick. Before we talk a little bit about Witness AI, we want to get to there. We want to go that route. I love talking to people who are security professionals and entrepreneurs. What do you think are some insights you could share with our listeners about being both?
Yeah. So maybe a little background there. So in the past 30 years, I think I've been in 8 different startups. Actually, my wife was in like 5 too, like 13 between us. Couple went well, IPOs, couple good acquisitions, some didn't. I would say the interesting thing with a startup, whether in security or anything else, the most important thing to me is like getting the market right. Before you get the product right, getting the market right and getting the problem right. If you don't get the market right, it's nearly impossible to make it work. Someone once told me missing the market is like going surfing on a flat sea. Like no matter how much you're paddling, if there's no wave, you're not doing a lot of surfing. And so I think if you're going to try and be an entrepreneur in security, make sure you get the market or sub-market right before anything else.
Well, and I'm excited because I've done a bunch of research on Witness AI. So this is our chance to talk about that. I think you've caught a big wave here. So what are you guys doing? What's so cool about it? What are some of the differentiators that you're showing to the market?
Yeah. So I'll put it this way. It's going to sound a little cliche-ish, but I like it. Is that what we find with most of our customers, which are large enterprises, when it comes to AI, enterprise AI, the biggest barrier is not like some sort of tech debt, it's tech doubt. And by that, I mean, they're worried, can my employees use this stuff safely? If I roll out AI models and bots to my customers, like, will it not embarrass us? Separate from getting knocked over. If my developers or IT guys or just anybody stand up agents, will those things not do something dumb like, delete our file system? So this notion of how do we give big enterprises confidence to deploy and adopt AI safely, that's what Witness AI is all about. It's a fairly technical, low level, interesting technology, but at the high level, giving market leaders in different companies, in different industries, the way to adopt AI very safely.
And you obviously talked earlier about having been involved with a lot of startups. You've also been involved with some very big companies, the Paulos, the Googles of the world. So what do you think leaders still don't understand about today's AI risk?
So that's a good question. It's a big question. I would say the thing that I think is going to bite people the most is they don't understand how important context is for AI. Let me tell you what I mean with that, especially when it comes to usage and data protection. So let's take data loss. Every company worries about their IT systems, their technology somehow coughing up customer data, IP data, financial data. The old way you do this, you have these products that understood structured data. They could say, well, I look at data, that looks like a credit card number, that looks like a social security number. Let's make sure an employee can't paste it into an email. It's a real basic stuff. Kind of creaky, but it worked. AI sort of blows this whole thing up. Like the structured nature goes away and context of how information is shared and processed really changes with AI. Let me give you a couple of examples that we see where context matters. The easiest one is, I'll give you an example from a customer. They had a customer support guy in their Bangalore office in India And he was writing a note back to a corporate customer, pasted an email response with a bunch of live financial information into ChatGPT and said, "Help me with my English before I send this back." Like, okay, that's, guy was trying to do the right thing, relatively easy thing to catch. Next customer where context matters. I talked to a CISO of one of the big pharmas, and he said, "Yeah, that's great, but like I don't have credit card numbers. We have massive amounts of drug discovery information, scientific information, stuff that's basically unstructured gibberish in a lot of ways. And our problem is we have all these PhD interns, and before meetings, they dump all of our drug discovery research into ChatGPT and ask to summarize it before they meet with their boss. You know, like figuring out that that's confidential information is very different than looking at what looks like a credit card number. So let me give you another one where context matters even more. I've got customers in airlines and customers in retail. Both of them are standing up models and AI bots to sell stuff. In the airline case, it's to sell tickets. In the retailer case, it's to sell stuff retailers sell. And in this case, it's a retailer who sells to like rural customers, farmers, that kind of thing. So, specific example where context matters with AI, that's a big change. If you go to the airline AI bot and ask for help with killing and poisons and guns, you know, the police are going to show up at your door. But if you go to this retailer who sells rural buyers in the Midwest, well, they use guns for hunting and they're happy to sell you those. And when you ask about poison, it's weed killer for the farms. And then when they ask about killing, it's we've got rats in the barn and rats in the grain silo. And so context really matters. But if you're both of these companies, the base models you're using and understanding how you deploy guardrails around that and when something is scary and dangerous and when something is perfectly normal business, hard to figure out. And so that's just kind of a long-winded way of saying context matters. I don't think people have figured this out. And as they start to adopt AI more and more and roll things out internally to customers, it's going to bite them more and more. Like to me, that's one of the big changes I see coming.
I like the term context. It's a unique way of envisioning what's happening in a space. Quick definition from you. I'd love to hear what you think of this, but what is shadow AI?
So shadow AI used to mean, um, hey, are my employees using ChatGPT? And what are they doing with it? Then that became, hey, there's 10,000 standalone AI apps. Which of these are my employees using? And then that became all my existing sanctioned SaaS apps have embedded AI in them. Are my employees sharing stuff that they shouldn't be? Now, shadow AI also means agentic. Have my developers built home built agents? Have my IT guys brought SaaS agents into my network? So it's this broad thing of, hey, I used to feel if I'm the CISO, I used to feel like I had a pretty good containment dome around my IT network, and AI sort of blew a big hole in the side of that dome, and I have no idea what's flying in and out of that hole. So, the notion of shadow AI discovery is what's going through that? How do I patch it? How do I put some controls? So if some employee through best intention does something that puts the company at risk, we can do something about it before it's a problem. Like that's to me, like when that's shadow AI, it's the risk more than anything else.
Taking that down into the next level of this journey. If you were to walk into a Fortune 500, what's the volume of unauthorized AI tools that are currently being used? What do you think?
So I'll tell you what I see because we have a lot of companies hook our stuff up. The first thing they do with Witness AI, they connect it to their network and they want to get visibility and observability. Tell me what my employees are doing. And I'll tell you, Rick, 99% of the time, you go in and they go, no, no, it's fine. We block everything but ChatGPT. There's no shadow AI use here. Don't worry about it. And then you turn the product on. You're like, hey, you've got like 55 of these apps being used. 3 of them are something we've never even heard of. But when we look at what components they use, these components have all these CVEs and sort of vulnerability, and you should probably do something about that. And then they look at their existing network security, their proxy, and that product didn't even classify this as an AI tool at all, so there's nothing there. Now, the next rev of that is agents, and people turn on these agents, which have all of the risks of employees talking to apps, but these carry all these sort of authorization human agent risks that no one's even quite figured out how to deal with yet.
It makes a lot of sense. So I've heard this called kind of the fear based approach to AI security. What do you think are areas that are causing the most damage when it comes to this approach?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I think the fear-based approach is typically the company saying some combination of policy is no one's allowed to use this stuff. Bad if you use, don't do it. And then some subset of that actually put in some sort of blocking. But a lot of them don't. They just say the policy is you can't use that stuff. And people use it anyway, right? So the fear-based approach says I'm going to sort of scold my employees for doing these tools, which all they read about is how magic these tools are, but we don't want them to use it. And the non-fear approach, which I think more companies are coming around to, is not, "Hey, let's talk to a security professional," and they say, I don't want to be Dr. No, I want to be Dr. Yes. Like, how do I let people use this stuff? So the fear-based approach is don't do it, bad, no, 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 you're going to get punished. And then they use it anyway. The enablement approach is how do we pick the tools that are most effective? How do we let our people try this stuff in a way that's safe? So our data is protected, our customer data is protected. How do we let them try amazing agentic tools like Claude Code or OpenAI Agentic mode and not have these agents run amok? And so I think the enablement approach is a much better one. You're seeing companies sort of come to it. I would say in my 25 plus years in security products, most of that time the CISO was the blocker, and now they're trying to be the enabler.
So, Rick, I want to learn a little bit. We know a lot of things are connecting through API integrations. How are API discovery and security correlating? How is that correlating with the use of artificial intelligence today?
Yeah. The way that is all coming together is coming through Agentic. When we started the company, the way we would talk about this, we would say, hey, look, today you have people going to chatbots, but that's not where it's going to stop. Eventually, those bots are going to talk to each other and they're going to do it through APIs. And so any guardrails you have around AI use have to work at the API level too. Along the way, that became called agentic. We used to just say it was API or app to app. So think of it like this. You have every existing application is putting an agentic layer wrapper around what it does. Maybe those communicate via some sort of human interface, but increasingly they're communicating via APIs. So, and those agents not only communicate with each other over APIs, they communicate with their backend brain. They talk to a model somewhere, which is typically in the cloud. So they talk to an LLM and get commands via APIs as well. So if you go down the road a little bit and say companies are going to have agents they build themselves, and those agents may represent their employees and do tasks for their employees. They may have applications and the agents represent those applications. And those things talk to each other and other things via APIs. You need to be able to insert into an API stream, discover when new agents or apps pop up, discover them that way, see how they're communicating, understand the intention of that communication in the context, and decide whether you want to allow it or do something with it. That's where I think this all comes together. And I think that is why most security orgs in big enterprises are worried because they see this happening. And it's one thing to say, hey, Rick and Rick are talking to Gemini in a browser. Like I can control that. But RickBot talking to RickBot, talking to something else at the speed of API with all the rights and authorizations that the two Ricks have, but with no controls over that, now that's a scary situation. So I think that's where AI, API, and guardrails all come together is the way this agentic revolution that's unfolding right now.
Now, Rick, you've built Witness AI to give organizations visibility, control over their AI use. What is one metric or signal that tells you whether a company is in trouble?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I'll give it a big one and a little one. So the highest one I would say is when I know they're not in trouble is when they start to ask me, what metrics should we be using to track our AI success? And a year ago, we never got that. And the last 3 or 4 months, we get that all the time. And they'd say, look, I bought all this stuff. I deployed it. I think my people are using it. How do I know if we're successful? And the ones that are in trouble, they haven't even gotten to that point yet. They don't even, they're like, I don't know. I put something in. I guess it's working. I don't see the value. I'm not really sure. I don't know. You'd be surprised how cleanly that line is between companies that kind of know what they're doing and the ones that don't.
Walk us through a moment that you realized the industry was thinking about AI security just a little bit wrong, and kind of what happened when you had that realization.
I'll give you an example. Prior to WitnessAI, I was working at a large company. ChatGPT hit the scene November 2022. Joe told everyone to go run away and go use these AI tools and become an AI powered marketer, developer, accountant, whatever. Everyone went away and did. Came back a couple weeks later. The general counsel went, "Oh, no, 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 no! The amount of stuff you guys have leaked is crazy." Everybody immediately stopped, and these two guys in the office of the CTO are the only ones who are allowed to use these tools now. And you'd be surprised how many people I spoke with at other companies who had the exact same, you know, run to the right, run to the left process. And it became clear as these tools became more powerful that that was just not going to work. And you had to move from the old command and control, fear based, marketing with shadow guys in hoodies, AI is the guy in the hoodie, to a thing where like we have to enable this stuff. It has to be like, how do we use this stuff for good as opposed to how do we block it for bad? For me, that was, as a long-term security vendor, like that was when the scales fell from my eyes. It had to be a different way.
Let's take that a little further and talk about the human side. Where do humans fit into AI being driven into this world, right? We see AI driven risk, but where do the humans fit and what skills are going to matter for those humans?
So it's a big question. I'll give you what I see happening in my company because I feel more qualified to talk about human AI interaction in my own company. And the way it's happening here is our people, our humans, our developers, my company's primarily developers, are using these AI tools to become literally 10 times more productive. It's crazy how powerful this stuff is. It's amazing how powerful it is. And so the challenge is, how do we use these things to be super productive in a way that is also safe? I'll give you an example. An obvious one, humans have all these rights. So my developers they can wipe out all of the files in Witness AI. They can go to my GitHub repo and wipe the whole thing out. They can kill my backups, but they're not going to, right? They have the judgment not to. But they might create an agent to do that work for them, and it has all the rights and responsibility, all the rights but not the responsibilities. And they'll say, "Go optimize our code," and the code, goes and deletes all our files and the backups because that's the most efficient way to like write a new code. So this notion of when AI starts to stand in for the human, but doesn't necessarily have the judgment to do what the human would do, but is 10 times more productive and could cause damage 10 times faster, untying that knot is something I think every company is struggling with a little bit right now. And um, we think we've got a handle on it, but you know, we're relatively small. I think larger companies are going to struggle with this.
Rick, I used to ask people questions about painting the future of cybersecurity or digital transformation and show us what 3 to 5 years looks like. But what is the future of AI governance? What does the future of AI risk in the next 18 months look like?
Yeah. So we actually, I'll go to one of your earlier questions. Like we actually have built into the product, like my notion around metrics. We've actually built three buckets of metrics: cost metrics, adoption metrics, and risk metrics. And the kind of things we track in risk metrics, it's you want to be able to show it's the things people care about with AI. So show me that I've reduced risk because I've applied AI to defend ourselves better. Show me that I've reduced risk because I've applied AI to reduce vulnerabilities in my code better. So when people ask about risk metrics, they want to be able to look at things like we've applied AI and our corporate, you know, threat risk has gone down. Vulnerabilities have gone down. We've applied AI to our code and vulnerabilities in the code have dropped. We've applied AI in the SOC and our ability to filter through noise and respond and figure out, actual alerts we have to pay attention to, that time has dropped. So over the next 18 months, I think you're going to see people applying AI in in broader ways and deeper ways. Broader, you're going to apply it to more and more things people didn't think it was ready for, and deeper, you're going to let it do more. if someone, this is a Cyber Pro podcast, probably everyone here has played with some of these tools. But if you haven't, go play with Claude Code and see what it can do. It's crazy how powerful it is. So I think over the next 18 months, you're going to see more and more of that depth come to these tools, and people apply AI everywhere and expect it to expose risk, and not only expose risk, but to remove the risk and fix the vulnerabilities along the way.
So the next question's, Rick, shorts. We'd love it if they're 30 seconds or less, but we want a good answer as well. So we'll make it work. So the first one, what is one artificial intelligence tool that employees should just stop using immediately?
Well, I don't know that I can respond to a specific tool, but I think there's a class of tools. So I'll tell you, we track thousands and thousands of AI apps in our Witness AI risk database. Many of these things are hosted in countries where they don't appear to be hosted. They're built on supply chain components you don't think they're built on. So I would say broadly, you should stop using any app that is much riskier than it appears to be. And that sounds like a simple thing to say, but companies want to figure out, how to actually answer that question.
What is one AI safety rule that every company should adopt?
Observability first. You can't protect and you can't secure what you can't see. It is a cliche in security, but it applies very much here. I think very few companies have an actual good assessment of their AI use. And before they have that, they really can't decide how to apply any sort of acceptable use policy. So get visibility first and all else follows.
Every employee in every company became AI literate tomorrow. What percentage of shadow AI risk would disappear?
My guess, you'd probably reduce it by about 10%, and you'd probably increase it by several 100%. Here's why. You're basically saying the subset of apps that are risky to use would stop being used, and the sort of dumb use where they put things into these apps they shouldn't would go down. But if every employee was super AI productive, they would be using new things like Claudebot and Moltbot and open up, dozens of new vulnerabilities and holes that they weren't doing before. So I think on net, you'd have actually much more risk and vulnerability than you would today.
What is one uncomfortable truth about AI in the enterprise that leaders just won't say publicly?
So I think in practice, the real uncomfortable truth today is most companies rush to adopt some set of AI tools, and their ability to understand if they're using them effectively and if they're being successful, most companies haven't gotten a handle on that yet. So they ran quickly and, you know, didn't understand yet if they were running onto ice and if they're gonna if
Rick, what's the biggest myth about AI risk that just drives you crazy?
I think the one that worries me personally is that some company, if I look at my company, that a competitor that is using AI more effectively and more extensively than we are will pass us by. And I think there's this myth among a set of customers that if they just lock this stuff down, the noise will go away for a year or two. And it's not going to happen. Their competitors are going to use this stuff and pass them by.
Rick, Witness AI, thank you so much for being on the Cyber Pro podcast. This was super, super fun.
Thanks for having me, Rick. I appreciate being here.